So some people are uneducated. Among the general public, there are hundreds of aviation misconceptions and fears that are completely rooted in nothing. So today, I'm debunking the most ridiculous airplane myths that a surprising amount of people actually believe. Myth 1. Lightning striking the plane will cause a fire. Although this is a common fear for passengers, a fire caused by lightning is highly unlikely. If an aircraft does happen to get struck, the plane's metal fuselage is designed to channel the electrical current along the exterior and exit through the tail or wingtips. This means it is extremely unlikely for any type of electrical current to reach the cabin interior or fuel tanks. Fuel tanks are also heavily safeguarded to prevent ignition of the fuel and reduce flammability. Electrical systems and wires also have multiple layers of protection to prevent damage. So in summary, in the highly unlikely case of a lightning strike, airplanes are designed to handle these events and almost never suffer damage that affects safety. Myth 2. If you tried hard enough, you can open a plane door midair. So a concerning amount of people at my school actually believe this, but it's simply not true. Commercial airliners typically cruise at around 30 to 40,000 feet. At this altitude, air pressure outside is extremely low and there are fewer air molecules in the atmosphere. That means if you were to breathe at this altitude, you wouldn't be inhaling enough oxygen to power your body's functions. This is why airliners have processes to keep the inside of the cabin at a high enough pressure so that you can actually breathe. This high inside pressure pushes outwards, trying to escape to the low outside pressure. This keeps the doors locked in their frames, literally physically impossible to move or open. So unless you can bench literally several tons of air pressure, that door is not going anywhere. Myth 3. A smooth landing is a good landing. While a smooth landing is generally more enjoyable for passengers, it isn't always the best option. Firstly, there are a multitude of reasons why landing, braking, and stopping on the runway quickly is desirable in the aviation world. Obviously, stopping quickly on a short runway is important, and when a runway is wet, braking performance is hindered as well. Also, stopping quickly generally just saves turnaround times for airlines, allowing them to operate more efficiently. So when a pilot elects to perform a relatively firm landing, spoilers are activated swiftly and braking is as effective as possible. However, if a pilot aims to perform the smoothest touchdown possible, they run the risk of overflaring, floating, and touching down way too far down the runway, possibly resulting in an overrun. Also, planes' landing gear are specifically designed to be able to withstand firmer touchdowns. So although it may sound counterintuitive, firm landings are generally the safer option in aviation, and attempting smooth landings are simply more risky. Myth 4. Autopilot does everything. Contrary to popular belief, Autopilot only does what the pilots program it to do. The pilot set a certain altitude, Autopilot climbs to that altitude. Turn to a specific heading, the Autopilot does that. Adjust to a specific speed, the Autopilot will maintain that speed. Other than doing some very basic calculations in the flight computer, the Autopilot system is quite fundamental. It's not some kind of sentient AI that multitasks and carries out all flight processes. Besides, Autopilot is generally never on during critical phases of flight, such as takeoff and landing. Those are all typically hand-flown by the skills of the pilots. However, there is one exception, which is during a procedure called an auto land. When visibility is extremely low at an airport, planes will generally use a Cat 3 ILS approach for landing. A Cat 3 is a category of approaches used in the worst visibility conditions, such as heavy fog or rain. When this type of approach is in use, pilots almost always activate the auto land feature, which guides the aircraft down to the runway and automatically lands it. However, this requires very specific and expensive equipment on the ground and in the aircraft, which is the reason it isn't implemented everywhere. Myth 5. Waste is dumped out of the plane. Many people believe that when you take a shit, it is expelled from the plane. No, it isn't. When you hit flush, a combination of cabin pressure and a vacuum pump suck away your excrement with some disinfectant liquid. It then travels through pipes coated in a material called Teflon, which is basically a non-stick chemical. Finally, it ends up in a large waste holding tank that typically has a volume of multiple hundreds of liters. And of course, no, there are no openings on the outside to dump waste. When you get on the ground, a lavatory service truck will pull up to the aircraft. A hose will be hooked up to a hole on the body of the aircraft, and the contents of the waste holding tanks will be transferred into the truck by a vacuum. The tanks in the aircraft will then be rinsed with clean water, and the disinfectant fluid will be refilled. Finally, the contents will be taken to a waste treatment facility to be disposed of. See, no dumping required. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Thanks for watching and bye.